This is Mike Siegel for Big Blue Interactive, and we're doing BBI Online today. And this is Dan Duggan of New Jersey Advanced Media here with me today. And we're here to talk a little bit about the Giants season, how it's unfolded, and for you guys to get a chance to meet Dan live and in flesh. And Dan, it's been a heck of a year. It's
tell me about it.
not quite what we expected this year.
No, I mean, the last time we really saw each other was in the summer when we were sitting there talking about Super Bowl goals and realistic expectations to be playing in that game. And clearly nothing's gone right since then. It's been a Murphy's Law type season. John Mara called it a perfect storm. Whatever you want to call it, just nothing has gone right from this team. Again, this is the last time we saw each other in August, and we thought we were going to be following a playoff team.
Yeah, no, I know. Everyone was excited. All the reporters kind of felt that this was going to be a good season. And I think, even looking at it from our website, I think everybody was pretty much enthusiastic from the fan side. And there was every reason to believe that there was going to be a really good competitive season.
Yeah, and then, like I said, everything's gone wrong. I mean, it started with, in the preseason with Odell going down, and they never really recovered from that. I mean, obviously he played a couple of games, wasn't 100% in some of those games, and then has a season-ending injury, and they just weren't equipped to deal with that loss. But that was just the tip of the iceberg, obviously, as we know, and I know all the people in BBI are well aware of, the off-field stuff and the coaching stuff and all the changes that have now happened in the last couple of weeks. So, like I said, there's no other way to describe it. It's just kind of been the season from hell.
Yep, misery, sheer misery. The thing that surprised me the most, I think, this year, because when we all were analyzing the team logically, looking at the logic of it, we all kind of felt, well, the defense was going to be what it was last year, and it really wasn't. Yeah,
that's the biggest surprise, because I looked at it like, all right, the offense wasn't very good last year. I definitely bought into the fact that Brandon Marshall would have been a big upgrade. That didn't pan out. Evan Ingram has kind of made the impact you expected, maybe a little even more, because more's been asked of him. And you figured they didn't really lose anything on defense. Hankins kind of replaced by Dalvin Tomlinson. You think B.J. Goodson's going to be an upgrade. You think Daniel Thompson's going to be an upgrade. And somehow all these parts came back together, and it hasn't come close to being what it was last year. I mean, they were second in scoring last year. I don't know what they are in scoring right now, but they're last overall in yards. I mean, it's an incredible fall. I mean, granted, a lot of the same stuff with injuries has definitely, hampered them, but a lot of it is just guys underperforming. A lot of it definitely does come back to coaching. But again, that's the biggest surprise, that the defense has gone from what it was, to what it's become, because they brought back pretty much every piece from one of the best defenses in the NFL last year.
And Dalvin Tomlinson was a good addition to the defense also. I mean, it wasn't like that they neglected filling the pieces.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, again, you just looked at it on paper. I mean, you just plug in B.J. Goodson, he's an upgrade on Kelvin Shepard. You plug in Daniel Thompson, he's an upgrade on Andrew Adams. You plug in Dalvin Tomlinson, he's at worst a wash with Jonathan Hankins. So how does the results fall off this much? And that's where a lot of it is stuff that's kind of been between the ears or in the locker room, and that type of thing has certainly contributed to just the underperformance overall.
And you get the sense that in looking at the offense that there really was no real change from the way the offense performed. I mean, it was kind of the same offense. They didn't really innovate much. I mean, they put the extra tight ends in, they put the fullback in, but they didn't really commit to the fullback.
Right. Yeah, I mean, even Red Ellison, he wasn't playing a heck of a lot until they lost all their wide receivers, and they had no choice. And I think he's been okay the last 7 or 8 games. But the first 4 or 5 weeks, I can remember saying, you gave this guy $18 million. Why isn't he playing? And that was supposed to be a weapon that you bring him in with Ingram. You don't need to play 3 wide receivers every snap like they did last year. That was supposed to inject a little creativity, but McAdoo was just so stubborn, basically just stuck with the 11 personnel. Again, Ellison's played a lot now because who else are you going to put out there? Your practice squad wide receivers, lining your roster now. So they really had no choice. But yeah, the offense, I mean, clearly that was the undoing of Ben McAdoo in a lot of ways, because you can't get hired as an offensive guru and have an offense that can't put up, let alone 30 points. They couldn't even put up 24 points in the last 17 or 18 games of him at the helm. So the offense was kind of a disaster throughout his entire tenure as a head coach, and was I think a big part of why he's on the outside looking in now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't even 17 points. So a lot of the 17-point games we had were defensive scores contributing to it.
It was not a pretty offense the last year and a half, 2 years now.
So what's going to happen? I mean, you guys have been inside. I know that that we talked informally, and when we talked last, the appearance was that Gettleman was going to become the GM.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of logic to that. But it does seem like the front office is taking a very studious look at this, a serious look, and it doesn't seem like it's a given that necessarily that it's going to be that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're going to start the process. We actually just spoke to Kevin Abrams, the interim GM, and he said he's going to get an interview, which is an obvious, you're going to give the interim GM a shot. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Ross gets an interview, and just to be honest, I mean, he would satisfy the Rooney Rule. So if you want to hire Dave Gettleman tomorrow, you have to interview a minority. So Mark Ross kind of checks that box, as well as a guy who's been here for a long time. Gettleman will be in that mix, and then they're going to have to wait if they want to interview Nick Caserio or Elliot Wolf or any of these hot names that are a number 2, or Caserio, I don't know what you really label him as. Everyone's number 2 to Belichick in that organization, but any candidate who's employed, they have to wait till after the season. I think it would look really bad from a PR front if they just hire Dave Gettleman within the next week without even kicking the tires on some of those guys. Now, maybe they go into that process saying Dave Gettleman is going to be our guy, but let's just see what these guys have to say. And maybe one of these young guys just knocks their socks off, has a 10-point plan that they're like, oh my goodness, this is brilliant, and he's got everything mapped out, and maybe that changes their mind. You would hope they go in with an open mind. But if I was putting my money down tomorrow, I would still say it's going to be Dave Gettleman, because you know how this organization works. They're hesitant to make big changes. I mean, Jerry's the first GM they've ever fired, and they like having that kind of stability, and you know what you're going to get. If Dave Gettleman comes in here, there's not going to be wholesale changes. He's not going to come and start ripping up the scouting department. A lot of the guys who he either came in with or was here when they got hired, or even preceded him in some cases, he's not going to come in and tear it down. For whatever John Mara said, we're standing up on the same stage he was on, about wholesale changes. He was hesitant when I asked him specifically, so you'd be okay with the GM coming in and basically gutting the front office? And he goes, oh, whoa, I didn't say, it doesn't have to be that. And I mean, listen, he's got family members in the front office. They're not going to get shown the door no matter who comes in here as GM.
Right.
I think a guy like Kevin Abrams, if he doesn't get the full-time job, I would be very surprised if he's not still a part of this front office. I mean, if Gettleman gets the job, it makes a ton of sense to keep Abrams around. He has strength with the cap and negotiating contracts, and then Gettleman's 66 years old. You might say Abrams is just about ready. Let's give him even more responsibilities, really be the number 2 guy to Gettleman, and then in 5, 7, however many years, then he's really ready to take over, and then he can be your GM. And it just doesn't that feel like a John Mara, Steve Tisch type of plan? Kind of keep it in the family.
There's a lot of logic to it. There certainly is. But when you listen to Kevin Abrams speak today, he sounds like a GM.
Yeah.
I mean, he made some very salient points. He sounded very confident, and I think that wouldn't it make more sense to take a wait and see approach, or even if it looked like it was forecasted, doesn't it seem to make a lot of sense to let them throw out the fishing lines and?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's what they'll do. Again, I mean, Nick Caserio might come in here and just have a plan that he's been sitting on for 5, 7 years under Belichick, and saying, when I get my chance, this is what I'm going to hit the owners with. And the Giants, again, they might be blown back and say, well, listen, this guy's a rising star, and let's kind of throw caution in the wind and go with him. And I think that's probably what they should do, whether it's Caserio or Elliot Wolf, or go on down the list of candidates that have all been thrown out there for the last couple of weeks. I think they should. I think it's time to kind of be bold, break from the sort of the George Young tree that's just kind of been so rooted in this franchise. I think it's time to kind of bring a new voice in, try something different. I just don't think they're going to do that. I just have no sense that John Mara is willing to just kind of hand over the keys, because it's one thing get a head coach from outside. That's one thing. GM is much more dealing with John Mara on a day-to-day basis, making decisions that really affect the long-term future of your franchise. So I have a hard time when there's a guy like Gettleman, who they obviously know and trust and like, available. I can't see John Mara passing on him for some kind of young unknown.
Yeah, they did pass on him before.
That's true. That's true.
All right. Well, now that we've fleshed out some of this stuff, some of our viewers had questions for Dan, and let's see if we can make our way through them. JVM 52106 said, is the feeling in and around the team that Ben McAdoo felt Eli's style was a bad fit for his offense, and that it would have performed better with Smith in general, and not just the last few weeks?
That's an interesting question. I think when Ben McAdoo came here as the offensive coordinator, he knew Eli Manning was the quarterback. Eli Manning had just signed his extension, I believe. Then he becomes the head coach. He knows, again, Eli Manning's not going anywhere. So he had to, at one point in time, think, I can make my offense work with Eli Manning at the helms. And arguably, his 2 years as OC, I mean, it did run. I mean, I know people are going to say, well, they put up a lot of points in garbage time because the defense was so bad, blah, blah, blah. I mean, at the end of the day, the offense at least put points on the board. And Eli Manning had some of his best statistical seasons in those 2 years. But it certainly seems like something changed. I don't know if he never was fully on board with Eli, figured he'd give it a shot, and maybe thought it'd be easier to move on. I don't know, because, I mean, there wasn't going to be another option that they were going to easily be able to move in and push Eli out, as we found. I mean, trying to slide him out for Geno Smith, was a complete PR disaster. I think there is a part of Ben who, in his heart of hearts, felt like Geno Smith legitimately gave this team a better chance to win. I mean, we saw him play in Oakland, and for a guy who hadn't started in over a year and hadn't really started a serious amount in 2 or 3 years, Geno was competent. I mean, he wasn't great. He wasn't. He didn't light the world on fire. He was no worse than Eli Manning was. So I could definitely believe that Ben McAdoo, coming from an offense that featured Aaron Rodgers, running around, improvising, I wouldn't be surprised if he felt like having a more mobile quarterback would have made a difference. But things just certainly seemed to go sour with his relationship with Eli towards the end. Just sort of the way he treated him publicly, some of the comments he made. It definitely took a turn south in that relationship somewhere along the line.
For me, looking at Geno Smith, he didn't look very different to me than he did in preseason, because the team did seem to perk up when he was behind center, even in preseason, and they moved the ball well. But he's a turnover machine. He turned the ball over in preseason. Right. Every game. He turned the ball over also running around in Oakland.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't a long-term answer. I mean, even every move they made was designed to get Davis Webb at least a look in the last whatever was going to be 3-4 games. Geno kind of was the bridge guy. Obviously, McAdoo didn't get to see that plan through. But he's a guy who he liked Davis Webb a lot. Last year in the pre-draft process, I think he's the guy McAdoo really wanted to see. Again, he never even got that opportunity. But definitely, I think McAdoo, was ready to move on from Eli to, a more mobile quarterback to try and run his offense.
All right. Sorry, we have to cut it short because there was a press conference going on and interviews, and Dan's got to go run along for that. And this is Mike Siegel saying goodbye for Eric Kennedy and thanking Dan Duggan for joining us today. And we'll see you soon.